Hello lovely people. Let's talk about sign language and baby. The benefits of sign language, why you should teach your baby sign language, how to start teaching your baby sign language, and how not to teach your baby sign language. Because there is a wrong way, and you'll notice where to start because my baby's 5 months old and he's tiny. Any advice in this video is intended for parents of hearing children who don't themselves use sign language as their primary means of communication, nor are necessarily fluent in sign language. But for those of you new here, hi, I'm Jessica, this is my channel. I make content about LGBTQ+ disability and chronic illness topics in a fun and uplifting way that is still educational. Subscribe. I am also deaf as a result of my disability. I know, you're probably wondering, but you don't sound deaf. Still my most asked question. I have a video that explains more, but I started to lose my hearing when I was a teenager and it was a slow process, but once I became aware of what was going on, I also became aware that my voice was changing slightly and becoming slightly lower and slower and more monotone because that's how I had started to experience the world. So I spent a lot of time working on my voice and practicing with different sounds to make it precise so that it could be clearly understood and how I talk in the front of my mouth. I don't really remember what my voice sounded like prior to losing my hearing, but it probably wasn't as crisp. Fun fact, I sound posher now. I will make a video about this probably at some point, but my voice is a very active thing, and if I have a really bad migraine or I'm exhausted, I don't have the brain power to remember how to make sounds, and because I can't rely on feedback from my ears, I really slur, and my wife Claudia is basically the only person who can understand me. But that's generally only when I'm hospital bad. Unfortunately, I know sign language, so I can still communicate. British Sign Language, or a form of it called Sign-Supported English, because the British part of this accent is not put on. I don't sign in my videos anymore though because I use British Sign Language, and actually the British part of my audience is really small, and I found it was just confusing people because there are many sign languages across the world. I rely on sign language a lot for when I actually need to know what is going on. Sure, I can get the gist of things through lip reading and hearing aids. They're enough for social situations where it doesn't really matter if I make you repeat the country you went to on holiday 5 times and then eventually just my wife signs it to me. But for workplace meetings, in a live panel Q&A, if I'm going to the doctor or the bank, I want a sign language interpreter, please. Or at least a friend who says she doesn't actually understand you, she's just pretending to, as I nod blithely whilst accidentally signing away my life because I just want this interaction to be over now, please. I do that. We also use sign language at home, although Claudia's pretty shy about doing it on camera. So when we found out that we had successfully conceived and our baby was on the way, click the card in the corner to see that journey, we started thinking about how we were going to introduce sign language to our baby, and found very quickly that everything on the internet seems to be about how hearing parents can teach hearing babies to sign certain words that will reduce toddler tantrums, and then I know it seems really silly to feel that I would need some help to teach my child a language I know, but imagine you are an adult who speaks Russian, bringing your child up in England with their other parent who speaks English. Research shows that the best way to teach children to be bilingual is to have each parent speak to the child in their unique language. But if the parent speaking English has a stack of English language children's books and the parent speaking Russian has only Tolstoy, then there is a bit of a disadvantage. Are you getting my example? I wasn't sure whether just signing to him would be enough. I mean, don't I need fun baby things, special signing books and songs? There's a local class that involves signing along to songs, but because it involves music and paying attention to audio cues in a group environment, it's not something that I can do. So Claudia goes with Rue, and again, it's not intended for deaf parents or deaf babies. Which brings us to the sponsor of today's show, Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creative and curious people. With thousands of inspiring classes, you can explore new skills, develop existing interests, and get lost in creativity. Today we're going to talk about the class Creative Writing, Crafting Personal Essays with Impact by best-selling author Roxane Gay. Yeah, no, that actual best-selling author, yeah. If you're also interested in writing, this class might be just the push you need. It's for everyone with a deep desire to write, whether you want to develop your writing craft or explore putting pen to paper for the first time. Your voice matters. This class is a jumpstart into finding your unique written voice, how to tell your story in a special and personal way, and then how to share it with the world. It's your time to begin. If you're interested in exploring your own creativity with the help of Skillshare, then you can sign up today by clicking the link in the top of my description. The first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so you can start exploring your creativity today. But hey, why teach your baby sign language in the first place? What does it matter, right? I interact with hearing people who cannot sign all the time. Why does my child need to adapt to me? Shouldn't I adapt to them? Well, firstly, that was just massively ableist to assume that I, the disabled person, am the problem and is therefore on me to be put out to make things easier for everyone else around me, even though that can require excruciating levels of labour. And yet, for other people to do the labour to make the world accessible, for me, it is a mere trifle, a mere inconvenience, a small thing that many people cannot even be asked to do. My children can learn to sign. I cannot learn to hear. And I have no intention of wearing my hearing aids in the evening in my own home. No thank you. That's like wearing a suit and tie to lounge around in bed. Yes, looks great in a magazine. Not exactly relaxing. But hey, sign language doesn't just benefit me though. Research shows that hearing children who have learnt sign language have improved memory and focus, are more confident and expressive, find learning other languages easier, have linguistic skills beyond their age group, are better able to express how they feel and what they need, have reduced levels of frustration due to being able to ask for help, and very importantly, can talk to people who use sign language as their only language and make deaf friends. However, there's always a however. You may have heard of something called baby sign. It isn't actually sign language. It's a form of cultural appropriation that became a bit of a craze in the 2000s. It's taught by hearing people for hearing parents to use with hearing babies and is generally dropped as soon as the child starts speaking. Because why would you need sign language when you can just speak, right? Not like deaf people exist. It uses signed words without mouth morphemes, which is like, so puffed cheeks for a lot, or tight lips for sorry, or facial expressions that are really important parts of actual signed languages. The signs that are used in baby signs are also sometimes even unrelated to the actual signs you would use in sign language, so your child isn't even learning a transferable skill that they can build on as they grow, which is a real shame. And it makes a lot of money on the back of the deaf community, but without including deaf people, sorry to say. The best way to learn sign language is always from a deaf signer. And more importantly, way more importantly, the world tends to view hearing children signing as amazing geniuses, ooh, but when deaf children do it, it's sad. And when those hearing aids get turned on, oh, a miracle. Hearing their mother's voice for the first time, what a beautiful thing. Now they don't need to sign anymore. People's reactions to me signing to my baby vary wildly based on whether they assume one of us is deaf or not. They think it's cute if I use my voice. Boy, do they stare weirdly if I'm being silent. You know, 70% of parents with deaf children choose not to learn sign language. Instead, their children are given devices like hearing aids, and the onus for communication is always on them. But what if all children just knew a bit of sign and could communicate on the playground? Any proper sign language can be taught for all children. Claudia and I have spoken in the past about how, if it's all possible, fingers crossed, who knows what the future holds, we would love to adopt, particularly a child who has some level of deafness, as it can be harder for children with hearing loss to be placed, and to be able to offer a family that they could communicate with and has a house that's already set up with accommodations like flashing fire alarms is pretty rare. So by teaching Rupert sign language now, we're teaching him to communicate with a deaf parent, but also his potential future deaf sibling. Also, hell, who knows what the world may bring? I mean, maybe he'll have, his next sibling will be also deaf. As a reminder, 90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents who have little or no background in deafness. So learning sign language now might help your child communicate with their younger sibling or cousin or family friend or BFF at school that they might otherwise have had no way to talk to. So what did we do? Oh my god, it took this long. What did we do? It took this long to get to this point of the video. Oh. Still though, right, I was feeling a bit lost on how to help Rupert at the start. The online advice is all either learn British Sign Language for adults or baby sign, which as we just discussed isn't exactly right. And also, I don't understand it. We decided that I would sign to Rupert all of the time, but in breaking with the one parent, one language tradition, there would be certain words that Claudia would also always sign. Those were mummy, mama, milk, bottle, hungry, pick up, nappy, change, bath, good, morning, night, play, finish, park, car, please, thank you, we, poo, our dogs, Tilly, and Walter, and I love you. We use those words a lot. We sign things specifically standing in front of him, even if it makes no sense for us to do so, just for his benefit. Like saying, good night, mummy, I love you. Good night, mama, I love you. When we've just said goodnight to him and we're about to leave the room together. We also introduce ourselves, like, hello, Rupert, it's mama. When I enter a room he's in. Intending on cutting back on that once he has a firmer grasp of the signs for our names, though as it is pretty difficult to remember to always introduce yourself. I read books to Rupert twice a day. When we first wake up and as part of his nighttime routine, I put my legs up and then just prop him on them so he can see me and then sign everything that I say out loud. That's really a good way to introduce words that might not come up in casual conversation. We also sit him at the table with us whilst we're eating so he can see us signing and having a conversation as part of our meal. We are stupidly polite to each other. There's a lot of, please can you take my drink? Just like, yeah, thank you. Please can you pass it back? Because we're sleep deprived and teaching our 5-month-old that manners are important. I use my voice around Claudia because she does, but if Rupert and I are alone, then I don't use my voice. I follow this really great deaf dad on Instagram whose handle is What Dad Did. Go check him out. He also follows Montessori. But in one of his posts, he mentioned that he doesn't use his voice to say his daughter's name because he doesn't want her to think that she should use her voice to say dad because she won't get a response. And it was this light bulb moment for me. I wouldn't want my son to think that I'm ignoring him, or if there was an emergency, I wouldn't want his first reaction to be to use something loud to get my attention and thus pass over the option to make a vibration or to flash a light, and therefore be in more danger. Definitely, if there isn't a person in your family who already knows sign language, then the best thing to do is to learn from the deaf community and potentially employ a deaf tutor, if that's an option that's available to you. The result. Rupert is now only just 5 months old. He was 22 weeks last Friday. He first mimicked a sign back at 15 weeks because, yes, the same way you can make a noise and a baby can make the same noise back to you, they can do that in sign too, if they know how to make that noise or sign. And it was the sign change. He's been babbling with his hands quite noticeably, probably for the last 4 weeks. And because he really watches my hands very intently to see what I'm saying, he now watches other people's hands, which is very cute. He started signing change and nappy pretty interchangeably when he needed a nappy change about 3 weeks ago. Occasionally, not every time he needs a nappy change. Don't worry. It's far easier to read the sign nappy than change. He wrings his hands a lot and sort of sucks them. And also his version of mama, which took me a while to work this out. He does this for mama rather than this. Makes it difficult. You have to do the sign you think it might be back to him. Huh? And then he just gives you this massive grin. It's really important to reinforce the sign or even the effort. So as soon as I get what he's trying to say, I tell him, I understand. I find it easier to understand him than Claude does because I know sign language better, so I kind of filter through the options in my head faster. He's a baby. He's not doing perfect signs. So she came to me 3 weeks ago saying, Jessie, Rupert's doing this weird thing. Is he signing? He's just staring at me very intensely and doing this with his fist over and over again. I was like, Well, he's probably trying to say mummy, but he can't separate out his fingers. And 3 days later, he moved from doing the full-fisted mummy, which honestly did look like he was bashing himself in the head, to the O hand shape, which isn't right, but he's getting there. So for me, the first, oh my God, he's actually getting this moment was when Claudia showed me a video she'd filmed to send to one of her relatives of him lying on his mat, staring up at her, and he was playing, but when she started to talk, he dropped his toy, and he very obviously put his hand into an O shape and started putting it to his forehead over and over. And the mummy is with an M, but pretty darn close. So signing someone's name when you see them is pretty good, but the really useful thing is that we were in 2K Maxx 2 days ago. Yes, I've been into the grand total of 5 shops now. I am working on that pandemic-induced agoraphobia. Thanks. And whilst considering whether or not I should purchase yet more vintage-looking glass baubles, the answer is always yes, Rupert stared me dead in the eyes and did this. The sign for milk. No fussing. So I signed this back, like, milk? You want milk? He smiled, said I understood, but we have to wait. We'll get to the car in a minute. Side note, there is nowhere to breastfeed anywhere in that shopping area, which is weird because it's made for families. Not the point of the story. He got his milk, he was a very happy bunny. And since then, he has been signing milk more and signing nappy less. But that is apparently just the way signing goes with babies. They will use a sign and then you will not see it for a while because they're working on it in their little brains, and then it will come out again at a later date. What if he's just practicing a sign and doesn't actually want milk? Well, all you've done is reinforce that this sign and this thing are connected, which is great. Keep doing it over and over and over again, because like everything with a baby, repetition is important. His signs are not perfect, just like his words are not perfect because he is 5 months old. But my God, it makes my heart so glad to see him when we're pushing him around the park in the morning and he's falling asleep and he's like just babbling in sign with his little hands as he's falling asleep. And it just makes me so happy because I get it. I can connect to him. I understand him. Really special. There is some info about sign language and how we're using it with our baby. Please don't take anything I've said as a negative if you're trying to teach your baby sign language and it isn't clicking for them. It's important to remember that all babies are different and obviously we all move at our own pace. Babies are no different. So no baby comparisons. Parenting is not a competition. The key things to note are to make sure that the sign language you're teaching your baby comes from the deaf community and that you're using it with follow-through, not with the intention that it's something to stop toddler tantrums and then be dropped the second they start talking. Because they're still going to ask you for unreasonable things in sign language and you're still going to have to say no in sign language and they're still going to have a temper tantrum in sign language. So that's it for now. Let me know kind of what stage you'd like to see an update video about Rupert's sign language learning. It's very hard to film him signing while still remaining respectful and not showing his face on camera. So I might have to do photos instead because those are much easier to crop. I tried to film his hand for this, but he always wriggles his face into shot with this like cheeky grin when I'm filming his hands. Like he knows I'm trying not to film his face. Doing it for your own good, Rupert. And thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Remember, the first 1,000 of you to click the link in that description down below will get a free trial of Skillshare. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Mwah!